Joining me today, giving an athletics update, is our director of athletics and campus recreation, Dr. Gerry DiBartolo. Jerry, how you been doing since last time we spoke to you back in what March, April, when kind of everything kind of started going with coronavirus?
Good seeing you today, Cyrill, even though we're not seeing each other face to face through our new method of communication, Zoom. A lot has changed from the time we last talked in April or March when we canceled all of our spring sports, and now we're kind of in that same boat with our fall sports.
That's definitely an unfortunate situation for our fall student athletes. Can you take us through what the decision making process was like for the CAC and the NJAC when it came to the fall suspension?
Sure. So since the beginning of the summer, both the CAC athletic directors and the New Jersey Athletic Conference athletic directors have been meeting and discussing the prospects of competing in the fall. And throughout the course of the summer, there was a very strong commitment to finding a way to make it work where we could compete and do it in a way that was safe and healthy for our student athletes, our staff, our coaches, and the fans. And we were moving in that direction because we knew how devastating it was in the spring, when we had to cancel all of our spring competitions. And we here at Salisbury thought we had developed a pretty good plan, put a lot of thought into it, and we're pretty sure we could deliver on those things that we wanted. And then little by little, Division III conferences, individual schools began announcing that they were not going to compete in the fall. They were canceling all of their fall competitions. And then the NCAA started issuing recommendations on what you should need to do for competing in the fall. And I guess the tipping point got to where there were some testing requirements, there were some safety requirements that many institutions felt were just too overwhelming, too difficult for them to actually implement. And once that train left the station, then we just saw a series of conferences who then announced that they were not competing in the fall. I would say the CAC and the NJAC were probably in the second half of that group as we continue to try to explore ways that we might be able to compete. And the intention on this campus was to try to make it work as best we could. But then once the presidents got on calls and they talked about limitations, the concerns, it became pretty obvious that it just didn't appear to be feasible to have competitions in the fall. And then after all but one conference in Division III had already determined that they were not going to compete in the fall, that's when the NCAA made the announcement, when the Board of Governors gave each division the choice to determine if they were going to conduct fall championships, that Division III would not be conducting any fall championships. And the last conference that was still planning to play announced late last week, early this week, that it was not competing in the fall either. So at this point, there's nobody who's competing in Division III. Now we're trying to determine how can we provide some type of meaningful experience for our student athletes. I can tell you this was a difficult decision. We're trying to make this student athlete experience and the experience for all of our students on campus to be as meaningful and rewarding as we can in the fall. But when we're looking out for the health, safety, wellness of our student athletes and our campus community, it was just the right thing to do to not compete this fall.
From a varsity student athlete's perspective of all our fall student athletes, even going into some of our winter student athletes, because the winter sports usually start up in October. What can they expect from a practice or a workout or even just a team function standpoint during this fall semester?
That's a good question. I mean, we're trying to figure that out right now. As a matter of fact, we're working on that. We have NCAA guidelines that we're following. We've got state of Maryland guidelines that we're following. We have University System of Maryland guidelines that we're following to try to determine how can we provide some practice opportunities for our student athletes to continue to improve and to have that experience of practice and camaraderie among their team. And, we've eliminated preseason, so there's no preseason. Our student athletes will come back with the regular student body. Once we get through our screening and sports performance testing, then they'll begin practicing. We will follow the guidelines of safe distancing. We will follow the guidelines of making sure that they're wearing masks while they're practicing. As a matter of fact, we purchase masks for all of our student athletes. These are breathable and protective sport gaiters that should be fine for all of our student athletes, and it'll be mandatory for them to practice because we still want it to be a safe environment. So it's probably not going to be the same as a regular fall practice sports season, but we're going to try to provide them with the opportunity to practice, to be a member of a team. Obviously, because of meeting limitations and space limitations, they're probably not going to be face-to-face team meetings in classrooms, but they'll have the opportunity to do Zoom meetings. They'll still have the opportunity to go and have a one-on-one with their coach, again, following our rules and rules that the campus has determined are important. So we want to provide, the counseling, the one-on-one sessions with their coach, sports performance, all those things that we normally provide for all of our student athletes during the course of the fall term. And we're trying to do that as best we can, but with limitations that we're currently faced with, and that and the number one priority is the health and safety and welfare of everyone involved.
You were just talking about the health, safety, and welfare of our student athletes. Maybe one of the things that sets SU apart from many other schools in our region is the effort and the expertise of our athletic training and sports performance coaches. What kind of services will those departments be able to provide in the fall for our student athletes?
We're not competing, but it doesn't mean athletic training is not going to provide them with the services. Those services, the delivery of those services might be a little different. The athletic training staff and the athletic training rooms, both in MAGS and the one over in the stadium, will be reservation only. So if you've got to go in for a treatment, it'll be on a reservation basis because they've got to limit how many people can be in that facility at any given time. And they're going to control who's coming in and out, and they've got to do the cleaning and the sanitation of that space before the next student athlete will be able to be treated. So that's going to be a little different. We're going to try to provide sports performance, but it may not be the same type of sports performance we're used to, where the whole team is in a weight room. Coach Nine and Pat Lamboni have done wonderful jobs this summer trying to figure out how can we do this. So we're looking at sports performance activities that are using primary outdoor spaces and some indoor spaces. We are looking at trying to alternate and rotate spaces. So we're still going to provide those services for our student athletes, but it might be just in a little different format, and the groups may not be quite as large because of the concerns related to large groups.
I'm sure the biggest concern, one of the biggest concerns of our student athletes is eligibility, because obviously in a normal year, the NCAA has a policy of 10 semesters, 10 semesters, 4 years, 4+ years, depending on medical reasons or getting your classwork done, finish up your degree requirements. What has NCAA come out in the past, couple months to help maybe give the student athletes a little bit of leeway when it comes to eligibility?
So last spring, when the spring seasons were canceled, every student athlete who participated in any spring sport was given a waiver, a blanket waiver, that they did not use the season of eligibility, irregardless of how many games their team played. So for the fall sports, the NCAA has issued a blanket waiver that says, as long as they do not participate in practices or competitions over the maximum number of dates, and that is 114 dates, and they play no more than 50% of their maximum number of games they could play. So, for example, football normally has a 10-game maximum game season. If they were able to compete in the spring of 2021, that determination hasn't been made yet. But if they are able to do that, and the conditions are exist for that, then as long as we scheduled 5 or fewer games, those fall athletes would not use a season of eligibility for participating in those games or those practices. If you go over that 50% max number, so for football that would be 6, and for soccer programs that would be 11, and I believe for field hockey that would be 10, then you would use a season of eligibility. The NCAA has come out and said that they are not moving championships from the fall to the spring, so there will not be any fall championships played in the spring. However, we might have an opportunity to play some games in the spring to allow our student athletes the opportunity to compete. But we would be very careful to make sure that we did not go over that 50% number, so that they would not lose a season of eligibility, since they are not able to compete for an NCAA national tournament selection.
And I'm sure that's good to hear, for good information to hear for our student athletes, to know their options and what this year could provide for our student athletes. Has there been any discussion so far about any winter sports competing, or even going into the spring? Has there been any discussions regarding those sports?
We're just beginning those discussions. Some of the conferences who have canceled their fall sport competitions extended that through December 31st. The CAC nor the NJAC did that. We suspended fall competitions. So for us in the CAC, we're beginning to have that discussion about winter sports, and when would it be safe for winter sports to compete. And a lot of that depends on what happens with COVID-19 virus, what happens in the local environments. Can we do things that are safe, given that many of our winter programs are in indoor facilities opposed to in our outdoor facilities? So we're going to begin those discussions here very soon to try to determine, what we can do for winter. And we haven't really begun the discussion of spring yet, because we're waiting to see what might happen with the vaccine or the progression of the COVID-19 virus, et cetera. So those are things we're all talking about right now. But everything we do, we're trying to do so that we're looking out for the health and safety and welfare of everyone involved.
let's switch gears a little bit to our club student athletes and also our intramural and recreation programs. Will there be any opportunities for our club sports to play in the fall semester?
Well, they're not going to be able to play games. That's one of the determinations we've made, that we didn't think it was safe. And a number of those club leagues have also canceled games for the fall term. So we're going to, similar to what we're doing for the varsity athletes, we're trying to make a determination and provide some practice opportunities for our club sports, as long as they follow and meet the guidelines that we've set for testing and safety concerns and density and those types of things. So we want to still provide them those opportunities to practice. Similarly, with intramurals, we're trying to look at what we can do to provide some intramural opportunities for our general student body that, again, meet the guidelines of safety, etc. No matter what we do, we're going to ask all participants to wear masks. We're going to ask them to try to remain social distance, and a number of those factors. So, large crowds in watching intramural events probably not going to happen. Just like not going to happen in club sports. But we want to try to provide those opportunities. On the campus rec side, and beyond intramurals, last week we opened both MAG's Physical Activity Center and we opened the University Fitness Center for faculty, staff, and students that are here right now or on campus and have active goal cards. And we're going to continue to do that into the fall. However, we've made a number of changes in terms of what you can do. So all of our recreational spaces, both in MAG's, over at the University Fitness Center, and the Indoor Tennis Center, when we open that up, will be a reservation only. And as I've used, it'll be like an airport or an airplane, excuse me. So we have X number of spots per hour. You've got to reserve them in advance. We're going to walk you in. We're going to give you a bottle of cleaning solution. We're going to provide you with a towel, a small cleaning towel, and then you're going to be able to do your workout for that assigned time period. And then we're going to ask you to leave and walk you out the building. And then we're going to clean that space and then allow the next group to come in. So it won't be a situation where I can just go into MAG's and do whatever I want to do, or go to the UFC and work out. No, it's going to be reservation only. You got to plan that out very carefully. There'll be we've already put those out on email, and we'll continue to update those. But we want to provide some of those recreational opportunities for everyone to be able to do those things. But people have to follow the rules, because we're following the rules that are mandated by the system as well as by the state and the local health agency. And if people follow those rules, they will be able to provide and have an opportunity to at least get some exercise and some recreation. It's worked very well. Now, we don't have a lot of students here right now. We don't have, we're still, a lot of our faculty and staff are still working remotely, and we're hopeful it'll continue to work well. But you have to follow those rules, follow the reservation systems. All the locker rooms are closed down. We're not allowing showers in here. You got to come prepared to work out. Bathrooms are open. And then once you're done, once your hour's up, you've got to go and you reserve a particular space, and you've got to stay in that space. We don't allow you to go back and forth between spaces. So it'll take some getting adjusted to, but I think once people figure it out and get comfortable with it, they'll find that, the opportunities to work out are well worth following those procedures. Again, you'll wear a face mask the whole time, whatever you're doing. And these will remain in effect until we see that some of the restrictions for COVID-19 are relaxed. They'll remain in effect. So we're hoping we'll be able to provide that experience for people.
And once again, I'm sure that's good to hear for a lot of our students, student athletes, faculty, staff, campus community, hearing your guys' guidance and procedures from your administration, the exec staff, making sure that we're all safe and sound once we're back on campus. Maybe our last question before we wrap up this interview is, it's been, unfortunately, this has been a crazy summer. It's been an unfortunate time for our fall student athletes, unfortunately, to have their season suspended, things like that, even our spring student athletes. What steps do we need to take in order for our campus community, Seagull Nation, to be safe and make sure that we're hopefully back to normal come spring, end of winter? What do we need to do?
That's a great question. That's actually a phenomenal question to end this little interview on. Before I answer it, I do want to say that I can't tell you how proud I am of our student athletes, our coaches, our staff, and the campus community in terms of how hard they've worked, how much time and effort they've put in, how positive they've remained through all these very trying times. From organizing Zoom meetings and having one-on-one meetings between a student athlete and a coach, and trying to be creative in how they do a number of these different things. I mean, I'm just amazed at how much our staff and the community's done. So when we return to campus, I think it's pretty simple. Wear a face mask, wash your hands, do not go to any large gatherings where you could be exposed to COVID-19. Be careful who you interact with. Do not allow visitors into your spaces. Follow the rules. Do whatever we can to minimize the spread of this virus. And if we do those things as a campus community, then hopefully we'll be back to normal in the spring and enjoying everything that a college campus has to offer. But that's got to be done by everybody. It just can't be by a selected few, because all it's going to take is one large gathering, a group of students deciding to go to some event, not wearing a face mask, not washing your hands, not following the proper sanitation procedures. And the next thing you know, we could have a number of students on this campus that might test positive for this virus. And that would be just devastating to the campus community. The leadership of this campus has really put a lot of time and effort and thought into how can we bring students, faculty and staff back, keep it safe, provide as normal an experience as we can. And, it all depends on every one of us here at Salisbury University doing whatever we can to follow those rules, those procedures. I'm sitting here in my office today. Every time I leave my office, I got to put my face mask on. Every time I leave, I put it on. Normally, my goal card is always in my pocket. I'm wearing my goal card because identifying who I am as I walk around the campus. And as long as we're all willing to do this, I think we could have a very successful and a very rewarding fall semester. Just like we say, our student athletes and our sport club athletes, and even an intramural student who participate in intramural sports, you got to be committed to what you're doing. You got to be a good teammate. You've got to be able to follow the rules, listen to your coaches, your advisors. The same thing applies here. I think it's pretty easy. It's pretty simple. It may not be the normal experience you have when you come to a college campus, but for this semester, this is the normal. And as long as we do that, I think we'll be fine. If we don't, then we could have some issues. But I have a lot of confidence in the fact that our student athletes are going to follow those rules. Our campus leaders are going to follow those rules, both students. I'm sure our faculty staff are going to follow those rules. And if we do it collectively, I think we can show that we can have and be in a safe environment here. But it depends on each and every one of us. And if we're goal proud, which I think we all are, and we're very proud to be a part of this institution and this university, I think it's a really small step we can all take to make sure that the person sitting next to us or the person I'm going to meet passing in the hallway or whatever that is, that I'm following the rules so that that person will remain safe. And some of the rules that we may ask you to follow may seem arbitrary or may seem foolish, but we thought them through, like stairways being one way up or one way down, so you avoid the passing that way, or limiting how many people can be in a space, or asking you to bring your own water bottles because we've turned off all the the general drinking fountains and only have the water pour stations, whatever those things might be. Maintaining your social distance. Those are really small steps to take to keep this campus as normal as we possibly can. I know we can do it. I know that you're going to do it. Every one of us here on this campus is going to try to do it. And if we can do that, then we can accomplish a lot this semester.
I for sure appreciate those words of wisdom. We got to make it to May. We got to make it to, so we're not back at home doing remote learning. We got to do our part to make sure that we're back in competition sometime soon. But thank you for taking the time to talk to me and informing the rest of Seagull Nation. Look forward to seeing you, hopefully seeing you around campus or checking in with you every once in a while. And hopefully we'll be back in a normal capacity come the end of winter or even the spring.
My pleasure, and I want to thank you and your staff for all that you've done throughout this time of keeping content fresh on the website and trying to just keep people informed. There's been some really creative things you do, and I'm sure that in the fall we're going to have a lot more creative things we're going to have up on that website. Go Gulls, and let's make this thing work come fall.